That's right, everybody, it's been my plan all along. I knew when I was playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that I would not finish it in nearly enough time to put a video out while it was still relevant, so now exactly a year after the game's release, I'm talking about it in the hopes that it will be somewhat relevant again. I don't know, there's been DLC, there's still people playing the game, so who cares? Let's just talk about Zelda. So The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild came out a year ago on both the Wii U and at the time the brand new Nintendo Switch. And the game opens up and Link wakes up in this shrine. He's butt naked except for some underwear. You hear a voice telling you, Link, you're awake. He grabs his Sheikah slate and he goes out of the cave and he's off on his adventure. How does he get there? What's his mission? What was his life like before the cave? You find all that out in the game. Now this is a very interesting game for me because The Legend of Zelda is my favorite video game franchise of all time. I've enjoyed pretty much every single game in the franchise that I've played. I haven't played all of them. I'm missing like the Oracle games. I've barely played Adventure of Link. Bits and pieces here and there, but for the most part, all solid games. And it's well known for a lot of people that Breath of the Wild was basically like, hey, all those Zelda conventions, we're gonna throw them out the window. Here's something entirely new that is kind of in line with the first Zelda game, but also like it's updated. But your dungeons, all your useless items, your annoying sidekicks, throw all those out. And one of the reasons why I wanted to wait a while before reviewing this game is because that first month or so for me playing the game was a little mixed. Now a year later, being able to pick it up, put it back down a couple times, I can reflect on it, and I do really love Breath of the Wild. The short answer for this review is all the 10 out of 10s that it got, it completely deserved. It's a great game. If you don't have a Switch, go buy a Switch, go play the game. Or play it on the Wii U if you're stubborn like me. But you start up the game, you're Link, you walk out of the cave, and I'll never forget this. My first experience walking out of the cave, I was like, oh, there's a cliff down here, let me just kind of hop down. Then I fell off the cliff and died instantly. Game over, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be like that. Okay. Which, yeah, I definitely did die more in this game than I did in any other Zelda game. But there's even certain conventions and certain controls that I was not used to. The biggest example of this is just how you use your sword. In most Zelda games, if we're going with the Wii U and Switch format, you control your sword with B, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, even Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the 3DS and on the N64. You use B to use your sword. In this game, you use Y to use your sword. So there were so many times, I forget what B does in Breath of the Wild. Is it the jump? I think it's the jump button. So there were so many times I was in a fight and I was circling around the guy, I pulled out my sword, but I just do a sidestep and then the guy whacks me and I'm dead. Then you play a bunch of Breath of the Wild and it's good, but then you try to go back to the Wind Waker or Twilight Princess on the Wii U, and every single time you try to pull out your sword, you end up pulling up like your bow or your hook shot. Then you got the instance where it's like ZL is the one that you use to lock onto people, but L is how you throw your weapons at your enemies. So there were so many times I would try to hit L to lock onto my enemy, but I'd be like getting ready to throw my weapon at them. That mistake is probably more just me being stupid, but whatever. But then once you get off the Great Plateau, you're in Hyrule, and the Hyrule in this game is monstrous. I still have not explored everything in the game. I haven't gotten all the shrines, haven't done all the Korok seeds. Open world games in general, I'm not very good at, and I didn't know how I was going to respond to this one, but the game won me over. There was always like a little hill or a little forest or a mountain, and I was like, oh, I wonder what's over there. And that would lead me into like 15 other things that I was trying to do. It's like in the other Zelda games when you get stuck on a side quest times like a billion. For a lot of stuff that they threw out the window with this Zelda game, there was still a lot of stuff that I enjoyed. I did enjoy the stripped down weapon system. You have your sword weapon, you have your shield, and you have your bow, and that's it. You have different types of arrows as well, like bomb arrows, fire arrows, ice arrows, but items like the spinner and the lens of truth and the whip, yeah, those are gone. And I'm fine with that because like I said at the beginning, the majority of those items, like the spinner is a great example of this from Twilight Princess, is you use that thing in the Arbiter's Grounds, then after that you pull it out, what, 2 or 3 other times in the game. Although I felt like with Skyward Sword they got better at making your weapons count, so that was cool. But there were definitely some items that I missed. I missed the hook shot. I missed, like, you know, you can get boomerangs as your sword weapon, but I did enjoy just always having my boomerang. The paraglider in this game was cool. So I think with a sequel for Breath of the Wild, I'm cool with the weapons that they have, but I wouldn't mind expanding it just a little bit. One of the newer aspects of this game is the cooking system. I had a lot of fun with that. It was really fun with that, just trying to get creative and trying to come up with new recipes. I didn't really look many up online, and usually the ones that I did look up online, I didn't have the ingredients for, so that was kind of a bummer. But whatever, it was fun, and I like the little thing that Link does when he's cooking, the little something as small as cooking. It really makes this world of Hyrule just feel lived in. I remember when I was a kid playing Ocarina of Time and I was thinking to myself, like, when does Link sleep? When does he go to the bathroom? When does he eat? So I do like in this game how they incorporated the food system. It also makes the game harder because you can't rely on just picking up hearts from enemies. You have to get hearts from your food. The other thing I really liked about this game, which is something I was really concerned about, is that a lot of open world games, they can be kind of light on story, especially ones like Breath of the Wild where it's a very non-linear type of game. I thought the story of the game was just going to be Link wakes up, he's got to stop Ganon, the end. But without going too much into it, there is a really good story to this game, and they do give you a lot of details as to what happened to Link before he ended up in that shrine. And I think it's becoming one of my favorite stories in a Zelda game. There's actually a decent amount of cutscenes in this game where they use voice acting, a new thing for Zelda. That was another thing that was big culture shock for me. The first time I heard Zelda's voice, I was like, whoa. Alright, and the majority of the voice cast is good. Zelda was a little weird sometimes. It always sounded like she was about to break out and just start crying. But that was another thing that I just kind of eased into. The voice acting overall, I was nervous about it, but the game ended up winning me over. That's really the big thing with Breath of the Wild, is this game tries a lot of new things. It also tries to strip some things back and pull it back to the original Zelda formula of just good guy stops bad guy. But the game adds in its own little twist, and as for someone who's been a Zelda fan his entire life, a lot of it was culture shock, but a lot of it won me over in the end. That's not to say all of it won me over in the end, and there's a couple things in there that I did still want to see. I wasn't big on the idea of the Divine Beast. I would have preferred bigger dungeons. 4 dungeons is fine. Like, Majora's Mask had 4 dungeons. There's a lot of other stuff to do in the game. And the myth and the legends behind the Divine Beast, like the story in it is cool. I just didn't like how those were our dungeon substitutes. For one, they're all pretty similar, and they all have fairly similar boss fights. So you look at a game like Majora's Mask, and you could look at any of the 3D Zelda games for this, and the majority of the 2D ones as well. You have your forest dungeon, your water dungeon, your fire dungeon. Majora's Mask threw in the stone temple tower, where you could shoot a light arrow and then the temple flips over and now it's a completely different dungeon. Which the cool thing about the Divine Beast is that they do have that thing where like you have to rotate the direction that they're going to access different points of the dungeon. So I liked that, but I just could have gone for more variety and longer dungeons. And also other people have gone on and on about this, but I'm still going to mention it. The weapon system with how brittle the weapons are, that definitely irritated me. There was definitely a couple spots where I could always warp to like stock up on items, but I didn't like how even the Master Sword, you know, the Blade of Evil's Bane, the one that is gonna wipe out Ganon, how that can still break. That frustrated me a lot. I feel like the brittle weapons are annoying, but I can live with that. But the Master Sword, after putting in all this time to get the hearts to get it, that should have just been indestructible. And one other thing that I wasn't big on, I like in the other Zelda games how you have to have pieces of heart. You collect them throughout Hyrule, you put 4 pieces together, or in the case of Twilight Princess, 5 pieces, and you get a new heart container. But they threw that out the window. In this game, it's all based on the shrine. So if you get 4 shrines, you get 4 spirit orbs, you can either exchange that for a heart container, or you can exchange it for extra stamina. It's an interesting system, but I miss the pieces of hearts. I'd rather them bring that back. Overall, Breath of the Wild is a great game. There's a couple things I forgot to mention. The music is another one of those things I was unsure about, but it won me over. And I also liked all the customization with the clothes. I liked how there were some that were fire resistant, some that were heat resistant. I ran around butt naked for the first like half of the game, but those clothes were cool. And then if you get the amiibos, like the classic Link amiibos, then you can get the tunics and stuff from Twilight Princess, Ocarina, the original Zelda game, which, let's face it, after I got those, that's all I was wearing. But the different clothes were still cool. Breath of the Wild is a masterpiece. It was such a great game to introduce the Switch. I did play the game on the Wii U, but I'm starting to go back right now and play it a little bit on the Switch. They're both great. As far as I can see, the Wii U version is not inferior to the Switch in any way. So if you don't have a Switch yet for some reason and you have a Wii U, go pick up Breath of the Wild on there, or just buy a Switch, play it on there. It's a masterpiece. It's not my favorite Zelda game, but it's really good. For me, just being an old school Zelda fan, there's a couple things in the game that I want to be like my old games. I want it to be like Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past and Wind Waker. So that's just me holding on to the past, and I recognize that, but the game still rocks. And so The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, it has been a year since the game was released. I'm sure most of you guys have played it. So I'll ask this question. Where does Breath of the Wild rank for you among the Zelda games that you love? For me, it's like top 5 for sure. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys liked it, you can click subscribe and check out some of my other videos, and I'll catch you guys next time.